Okay, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Assalamu alaikum, everybody, and thank you for joining us on the second learning meetup from Humanity First International. And today's topic is going to be on orphan care. So this was very much inspired by the element or the part of the khitab or speech given by Hazrat Khalifat al-Masih, may Allah be his helper, at the Humanity First conference, where there was a lot of emphasis placed upon looking after orphans and the needy. But before I continue, I would like to ask Dr. Muhammad Walid Ahmad Tatisa, aka Walid Sab, to please lead us in silent prayer before we continue. Walid Sab?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Dua. Ameen.
Okay, Jazakallah. Again, everyone, thank you for attending and attending on time. And as I mentioned, for those who have just joined, today's session is about orphan care, and this is very much inspired by the reminder of our priority of looking after orphans and the needy given to us by Hazrat Khalifat al-Masih at our Humanity First conference in October 2021. So with me today, I have Dr. Muhammad Walid Ahmed Setisa, or who we will be referring to as Walid Sab for the remainder of today's session. He is Vice Chairman of Humanity First Benin, but also the Director of the Darul Ikram Ahmadiyya Orphanage in Benin, and we'll be hearing a lot about his experiences overseeing and running that orphanage in Benin. And with us also presenting to us today, we have Osama Sab, Osama Ahmed Sab, who is the Director of Programs for Humanity First Germany. So assalamu alaikum to both of you. Thank you for joining us.
Wa alaikum salam rahmatullah.
Excellent. So before we crack on with Osama Sab's presentation, just to remind everybody of the format, Osama Sab will be giving us a presentation for about 10 minutes or so, and then we'll be moving on to Walid Sab to hear about his experiences. And during this time, everyone's cameras and microphones will be disabled. And only after these two presentations or two stories are relayed, then we will activate everyone's microphones and cameras so you can speak and ask questions using your voice. But at any time, you can use the chat function or the chat facility to ask questions. So at any time of the session, please feel free to write down a question and then I will read it out at the most appropriate time. If you are joining as a guest, please be mindful of your login name. If you could change your login name to also feature your country, we'd be very grateful, because then we at least know which countries have attended and where you're from, most importantly. So with that, I would like to hand over to Osama Sab, who is going to present to us on the ins and outs of opening and maintaining and running an orphanage. Osama Sab.
जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम रहमतुल्लाह. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. I will try to share my screen. Okay. Can you see it? Okay. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. So, inshallah, I will try to give you a short overview of a process of opening an orphanage, or how we did it, or the problems that we were facing. This presentation will cover 4 stages. So the very first stage is the planning stage, where you will have a proper planning for your orphanage, and I think this will be the most important part, as the content of this presentation was made out of our learnings. So in the very first place, when we started to build an orphanage, there were many things in our planning that we did not consider before starting. So we learned it at the end, and Alhamdulillah, now we have the possibility to show you some things you have to think about before starting an orphanage, and so you don't make the same mistakes that we made, and you can do it more efficiently, inshallah. So the second stage, when you have planned the orphanage, is the construction of it. And then after the building is constructed and everything is in place, you will have to build a team, which is in the third stage. And the fourth stage is that you run your orphanage and also keep improving your work. So let us talk about the planning first. So, and at very first, you have to see whether there is a need for an orphanage or not. So if you're planning to build an orphanage in a country, you will have to make a proper needs assessment. You have to talk to the people, ask the locals about if there is a need to open an orphanage or how orphans are treated in their country. Are there a lot of orphans? Are they taken care about from the government? Is there any need for further assistance in orphan care or not? So this initial needs assessment will be something you will try to do with the context that you already have. And when you decide, okay, now there is a need for an orphanage, then you will have to create your concept. And when you are thinking about your concept, there are a lot of things you need to plan for. So the very first question will be, okay, who shall be the beneficiaries? So this means, of course, we are doing an orphanage for orphans, but there are some considerations you have to make. Okay, do I want to have an orphanage which is mixed in gender? So we will take boys and girls, or will it be separated orphanage for only boys or only for girls? Why this is so important is that all the considerations that we will discuss now will also have an effect on your construction, because obviously, if you are making a mixed orphanage, you will have to have more different rooms where you can separate genders when the children are getting older. And many of these things have to be considered beforehand before we start the construction. So the next question would be, okay, how many children do we want to cover? So how many beds, how many rooms shall there be? And also, where shall the orphanage be situated? Maybe you can find some statistics where most of the orphans live. In Benin, for example, where we have our orphanage, most of the orphans are located in two cities. One is in Porto Novo, where we actually built our orphanage. The other one is Cotonou, where a lot of people are living, but also in rural areas, maybe there are orphans, but the number of them is not as high. So we decided to build the orphanage in Porto Novo. So other things we have to consider is what will be the daily routine of the children. So they will go to school. Maybe there are some children in an age who don't visit school, so they will stay at the orphanage. So what will they do in the free time? Do we have anything we can provide them, like playing ground or some facilities to spend their free time, like a garden? What we are doing in the orphanage in Benin now. So we have a gardening space. The children learn how to do it, and then a very important thing is to think about what will we do when the children are grown up. So these thoughts should not be when it's time for the children to leave the orphanage, but you will have to have a plan how you will assist them to stand on their own feet when they are grown up. So this work will start already when the children come into the orphanage. There, your planning should be made, how you can assist them in this way. And of course, one very important point is what is our budget? So are we planning a big orphanage or a small one? How will we fund it? This is also something you will have to consider. But inshallah, I think the funding is not that big of a problem. If you start working, inshallah, with the help of Allah, you will have the funding for it. In our experience, people are really, really motivated to donate for orphanages and orphans. So the fundraising for orphan care is not really difficult as long as you provide enough information about what you're doing with the money. So having made a lot of thoughts in the first place, then you have a plan made by your own, but still you have to understand that an orphanage is not something you can just open privately, and you cannot just build an orphanage and go and take the children from the street and say, no, okay, this is my orphanage and I'm running it like I want to. An orphanage is always an institution which is run with the government together. So you will have to get in touch with the government, and then you will have to find out about their needs assessment. So, what is the government saying? Where you should build an orphanage? Are there a lot of orphans they are not able to take care of? What are the legal requirements for the orphanage? So in the further presentation, this kind of point, like legal requirements, will be mentioned very often, because there are a lot of legal requirements when you are working on orphanages. At least this is what we have experienced in Benin. So most of the things that Haksar will present today is our experience in Benin. And it might be that in other countries, the rules and regulations and legal requirements differ. So this is why it is very important to get in touch with the government and talk to them. Okay, we want to open an orphanage. What are legal constraints? How can we start working on it? And what kind of support can you give us if we make this kind of social project in your country? Our experience is that, at least in Benin, the government was really motivated also to help us. So you can get support from the government in different kinds of ways. The government of Benin, they provided us with a plot for our orphanage. So they gave us land and told us, okay, there you can build it, and we didn't have to pay for that. But the construction site and everything was funded then by Humanity First. And also there in Benin, there is the Child Protection Service, which is the body of the government which organizes and checks the work of orphanages and also other caretaking institutions for children. And they are also assisting. They visit the orphanages on site and tell you if there are some things you have to improve or some things which are running very good. So you will always have feedback for that directly by the government, since they are checking you. So this is nothing that you should be afraid of. Mostly they know, okay, it's a new project and you cannot do everything right from the beginning. So they will assist you to improve your work, inshallah. So having made the planning and having talked to the government, then the next step would be the construction of the building. So at the photograph, you can see a picture from Ahmadiyya Darul Ikram. This is our orphanage in Porto Novo, taken by a drone. So when you are starting the construction, and this will also differ from country to country. You will face a lot of legal requirements. So there might be a legal requirement that the building has to be barrier free, so that disabled people also can easily access the building. There are some points concerning fire protection. There are some constraints from the government from Benin, how many children can be in one room, and also even the size and the height of the rooms um, were given by the government. So there was a minimum size of the room for the children that we had to consider when we were making the construction. So just imagine that we had, if we started the construction without asking the government before, then maybe they would not have accepted it because the rooms are too small. So these are things you have to consider before making a step of starting the construction. There might also be some constraints like the minimum number of sanitary facilities and also security measures which we have to take. So this was another experience in Benin. As you can see on the photograph, the orphanage is surrounded by a big wall which is separating the orphanage from the outside. So this is a security measure which was given also by the government. They said, okay, it has to be protected by other people from outside, and the orphans should be protected within this wall so they can move freely inside the orphanage and are not in danger to get harmed by anyone. And also, as you can imagine, this wall is quite long and quite big, that it is also a matter of financing these security measures. So apart from the legal requirements, there might also be requirements for your concept that you have done, like separate rooms according to the age or the gender of the children, dining halls, study rooms, playing rooms, and also outdoor activities, or an office where you can have meetings or have a private talk to maybe some officials or your team. And other requirements, also depending on your concept, is the accommodation for the director. So the lead by, he is living in a separate building, but inside the boundaries of the orphanage. And also, if you are planning to have some guests, like people coming for Vakfiarzi to join your work and to improve it, then you should also have some guest house. And also you will see that maybe the workers need some extra constructions, like small houses where they are protected from the rain when the security is doing the work. So from time to time you will see that you need to construct little things to improve the work, but most of the things you can plan beforehand. So after the construction is done, then there is the huge task that you have to build your team. And also there, you will face a lot of legal requirements. So in some countries, at least in Germany, I know that, I don't know how it is in Benin, that you have a minimum number of caretakers per child. So this, you have to consider this while planning for the salaries for your staff members and everything. There are also minimum requirements for security workers who are taking care of the children and who are taking care that nobody enters the building without permission. In Benin, there is a special requirement for a social worker, which is very important because the social worker knows how to document everything within your orphanage. So if you are running an orphanage, this will be a very, very huge factor, that for every single thing you should be ready to have it documented properly. So if somebody is visiting the orphanage from the side of the government and they are asking for some information, you should have everything in place. And in Benin, there is a special way to do it, and this is done by the social worker who takes care of the proper documentation. And also, when you're doing some contracts for your workers, you have to consider that they all have to have proper contracts, and also the taxes for the workers are paid by you as an employer. And also, there might be some constraints about the maximum working hours which one employee can work. So having all the legal requirements in place, and you know what you're looking for, then you still have to find people. And this is also depending on the country. If you have skilled personnel that you can find, which has already gained experience in taking care for children, as we started our orphanage in Benin, there you do not have so many people who have experience in that, and there is no proper apprenticeship or something like this for this kind of work. So what we did was that we made an inquiry, because the most important thing is that you can trust your workers, and there you have to do an inquiry. Okay, what is their background? Do you know the people from somewhere? Do you know somebody who knows somebody who is trustworthy? So this was the number one criteria for us to build our team when we started. And afterwards, we were looking for skilled personnel who has learned this kind of work, like a social worker or even a psychologist, which we then hired afterwards. But in the very first place, you will have to ensure that the people who are working for you in an orphanage, together with the children, and you cannot check them all the time, there should be people which you can trust, and this is the most important criteria for it. Okay, so talking about the team, I just have made a short overview of people working in the orphanage in Benin. So there is the director of the orphanage, which is Walid Bhai, and his wife. They are doing this work together. And there is the social worker, which is assisting the director, who is doing a lot of documentation and also other work. And then there are staff members of different kinds. For example, there are the mothers. We call them mothers, who are taking care of the children. There are a lot of mothers that we are employing at the moment. Then we have the security guards, which are also working in the orphanage, and a cook, which is preparing the meals for the children. Sometimes I think maybe Walid Bhai can tell it in more detail how it is organized. And also you can see on the right side that there might be some workers which you need from time to time, not regularly. There is a psychologist, and this is a point I think which is very important to understand, is that orphans which enter an orphanage, mostly they have some kind of a traumatic incident in their life, because of course they lost their children, they lost their parents, and this is traumatic for the children. But many children, before they come to an orphanage, they have faced a lot of different problems, like being forced to work, or being maltreated, or having faced some aggression by others. So sometimes it is very hard to get them adjusted into a running orphanage. So there might be like 10 children which are already there, and then a new child arrives which has some problems, some behavioral problems, some emotional problems, and having a psychologist which you can call in order to talk to the children and to give advice how to do, how to treat them in order that they can integrate themselves better, is very helpful. And other stuff like gardeners or tutors who will give tuitions for the children who have some problems at school might also be some things you want to consider having them in your team. So the stage 4, when you have made your team, would be that you run the orphanage and keep improving your work. So there are some points you have to consider also, which is like that the children need a daily structure. So this is really the backbone of organizing an orphanage, that you provide a daily structure for the children, like when do they have to do what are the timings for eating, will they visit school, what will they do when they come back, how is their free time organized. So children need a lot of structure in their life and good planning, so they know what will be done next, in order to facilitate their living. So this is something you know from your family too, that children need some kind of structure, and the day of the children shall be planned properly, also depending on the age of the children. So younger children might need to go to bed earlier than older children, and these are considerations you have to make when you start running your orphanage. Also, organizing the working schedule and team meetings of your teams, and also the in-house documentation and quality management are things you will have to consider. And also another point is, apart from the in-house documentation you are doing, still, as the orphanage is run by Humanity First Germany in the background, since we are financing it, we also have to have some reporting on a monthly basis to justify that we are providing money to the orphanage in Benin. So this is something that we from our side need to report to institutions which are checking our work here in Germany. So this should be in place before you start, so that you can keep record of everything which is concerning not only the budget and the money flowing, but also the activities of the orphanage. Then you will have to think about individual support for the children. Some children have individual problems. You will have to face maybe some problems at school or some emotional problems. So you will have to take care of them very individually. And also, as I already mentioned, the government is sending the Child Protection Service to check your work. So you will have to have everything documented in the right way. And maybe one interesting thing is how the children are coming to the orphanage in Benin. It is not like that we are looking for children and ask the government if we can take them, but the government is sending the children to us. So it takes a lot of time to gain the trust of the government. I remember when we first started our orphanage, we had a few children only for a long time. I think 5 or 6 children over months. And after many visits of the CPS, of the Child Protection Service, they checked how we're working, if we are documenting everything properly. And when the trust was rising and they gained more trust in us, more children were given to us. But it took a long time to convince them that we are able to manage to have like 40 children that we have now in our orphanage, which was I think maybe only in the last 2 years that we were able to raise the number of children from about 10 to 40 now. So don't get frustrated. Of course, you have to think about that. For the government, is also a very sensitive matter, giving children to an organization, because still they are responsible for them, and you will have to be patient and gain the trust of the government. But another point is also that you should really think about every single child, if you are able to take it or not, because sometimes children are coming which are in a very bad condition, and you have to decide, okay, can you really take care of this child, or is it maybe better to have this child brought to a hospital maybe before, or to a psychological institution where it can be taken care of better than in our orphanage. So you have to think about, when you accept a child, then you are responsible for it, and you will have to make a lot of different considerations if you are really taking this child into your orphanage or not. Yeah, I think these are the points. So some fundamental needs of the children you will have to organize for them. Of course, they need food and clothes. You have to take care of a proper education, and also healthcare is a very big issue. So we are having our children checked once in a month, and we document the medical checkup every month, so we can say that there was no child which was overseen or neglected, and we are always looking for the health of our children. And also, of course, free time has to be planned properly, and you will have to provide some different possibilities to the children of different ages. Okay, that's it. Jazakumullah.
Jazakallah, Samasab, for that detailed process flow that you provided us. But before we move on to a whole host of questions that we've received from our attendees today, alhamdulillah, I would like to now talk to Walid Saab, who is the chairman of the Dar al-Ikram Ahmadiyya orphanage in Benin, about his experiences running the orphanage. So I think the first question is, yourself, your wife, your family, you were relatively well settled in Germany, I believe. So what was the driver behind leaving that all behind and starting a new life in Benin?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So, as you have already mentioned at the beginning of the conference, that our drive is always Khalifatul Masih for everything we do. And, I and my family, we did not intend to go to the orphanage originally. So our original plan, we did not have a plan like this. We dedicated our life to Hazrat Aqdas. And originally it was planned that we would go to São Tomé and Príncipe. It is a small island nation in Central Africa. So in order to build a hospital there, because basically I'm a physician, so that was the idea. So it was actually Hazrat Aqdas himself in the last moment, when we already had sent all our private belongings and cars and so on to São Tomé. It was Hazrat Aqdas himself who decided that we should go to the orphanage, and that we did. And Alhamdulillah, my wife and I, we have found our paradise in the orphanage. And the Holy Prophet Muhammad ﷺ has said about the one who takes care of an orphan, that he will be with him in the orphanage like his two fingers, and he holds his fingers like this. So it is an extraordinary honor to be able to work there. And Alhamdulillah, Hazrat Akdas has later then granted us the honor to stay there and keep working with the children and keep developing the orphanage further, and that we are doing right now.
Alhamdulillah. So, I mean, Osama Saab mentioned the process of getting referred children by the local authorities to be something that takes time. What kind of things are they looking for? What kind of behaviors or systems or processes are they looking to see active in an orphanage to allow trust to be given to you?
You know, first of all, I would like to add one thing that Osama Bhai has already brilliantly described in his presentation. When he was talking about the fundamental needs, I think one thing we often take for granted, but it is not granted like this. You have to actually actively think about it. Is that children, the fundamental needs you have mentioned in the presentation are basically the worldly needs. But then the children need love and affection. Your own children at your home, it is not enough to give them food and shelter and education. You have to sometimes give them also, or many times give them also, attention and love, take care of small problems. And you know, the beauty of taking care of the orphans is actually in the small details. Like if two children are let's say fighting over a football, that you just go and take care of these small details. And this is also what the government is looking for. You know, there are a lot of structures, there are a lot of private structures that are run for several reasons. And I cannot speak for other countries, but I can say that the majority of the people who are working for the Child Protection Service in Benin, they are sincerely concerned about the security and the well-being of the children. And that you have to convince them that what the children will find at your orphanage is a home and not only a building. You can construct a building, but then you have to make a home out of it for the children. And let's look at it from the perspective of the governmental structures, of the Child Protection Service, of the social service. They cannot go into your orphanage and find out whether there is sufficient love and sufficient time for the children. But what they can do is they can look at the hard facts. When you are not doing your homework, like documentation, like having an advocate for the children in your orphanage, which is the social worker, like not having sufficient caretakers, then obviously there will be no trust. So what you have to do is you have to fully cooperate with the government. In Benin, I can say that all the legal requirements they are giving us, they are reasonable. They are not something that you like say, what kind of requirement is that? It doesn't make sense. But actually it makes sense. So that you have to understand that what they are asking for is nothing less but the proper run system to take care of the orphans. And then when trust is built, then they will not see you as someone who is asking for children or whom they are doing a favor, but they will see you as a partner. You know, a few months ago, I was in Ajawada, and we took 4 children in one day from the child protection service there. And he said something that actually gave me another deeper understanding of our relationship with the government. He said that all the effort we are doing to protect the children, and that you have to understand, the first effort is it's the governmental structures who are doing the first efforts. So all the effort they are doing is worthless without the private structure. So we are an integral part of the whole system of protection of children. And let's say we are actually the last step before the child is ultimately in a secure place. So, and otherwise, as I said, you have to respect legal structures. One brother mentioned now that obviously legal structures varies from country to country. That is true. So we can only talk for now for Benin. You have to find out in your respective countries what the legal requirements are, and stick to it, as Osama Bhai already said.
And on the theme of protection, how do you ensure that when you're not around, the kids or the children there are being looked after and they're safe? And there must be a lot of checks that you need to have in place to ensure that the staff that you hire are looking after the children appropriately and not exploiting them, and also the elder children are not exploiting and bullying, etc., the younger children. How do you have those protection or safeguarding measures in place?
So here we also have the structure the government has given us, which is reasonable and which actually allows us to have a proper, let's say, check and balance for the children. And we have the caretakers. We have enough caretakers. There is a minimum requirements of caretaker per child. Let's say children per caretaker. I don't have the numbers. I would have to find them out in the legal framework, but we fulfill the numbers. We have security guards. So the work is in the Ahmadiyya Darul Exam. It is organized like that the children, until they are in the building, the caretakers, the mothers, are responsible for the security of the children. And when the children leave the building, it's the security guards who are responsible. Any child who leaves the premises of the orphanage it has to be accompanied by minimum 2 people. So it is also not allowed, except for myself, to leave the orphanage with the child alone. So any security guard also who leaves with the children to go to the school has to be accompanied by another person, so that we can secure that nobody is offering money to one person to kidnap any children. So
what background checks do you do on the caretakers and security guards?
So there is from the tribunal, from the how do you say, court of the city, you get a I don't actually know what it's called in English, but it's like a paper where a judge certifies that you have never committed a crime.
Okay.
So that is our
check.
Sorry.
A criminal records check.
Yes, a criminal record.
Yeah.
So that is a requirement before somebody is employed, and well, except for that, we don't have any possibilities to actually do background checks because there is no other documentation. What we obviously do when we are looking for new employees, that we work together with the local Jamaat and try to work with people who we already know, or who people know that we already know. So, but this is like more a softer check, the actual background check is only the criminal record that we demand from every employee before he's employed or she's employed.
Sure. I just want to touch on one picture I saw on Twitter here. I'm just going to just share my screen. Could you tell me about this image here? You seem to be rescuing children from a flood.
Yes. So this is Mustafa, and back in the first picture you saw see Mufutao, his smaller brother. So these are two children. They happen to be Ahmadi also, and there was a flood in Benin. There is always, in the summertime, there are always floods in some areas. And unfortunately, the father who is epileptic had a epileptic seizure and fell into the water and drowned. So the children were left alone with the grandparents. The mother, who had some psychological problems, abandoned the children. And they were actually stuck in this house as there was all water everywhere and they could not leave properly. So we asked the Child Protection Service to help these children, and they refused because of the water. And after some pressure that we gave, there is always some people at the Child Protection Service who are not willing to cooperate. And you will have to cooperate with others. But as we knew already that these children are in severe need, so we again asked them to please help us to get these children out. And they said the problem is that they don't have the manpower to get to the village to make an assessment. So and this is again an advantage we have from our social worker, because the social worker actually is authorized also to make an assessment. I myself, I'm not authorized to assess a child, to assess a social situation of a child. You have to have a proper education for that. So I went there with the social worker. We made an assessment, and we took the children, and the CPS, the Child Protection Service, later signed our assessment form. So this is also based on trust, because if they did not trust us, they would not have signed our assessment form later. Mm-hmm. And but like this, we were able to get these children out of the water.
Yeah. So based upon my experiences or limited experiences in Africa, it's not the case that a child who is an orphan will necessarily not have both parents. Sometimes a child who is classified as an orphan may actually have one parent alive. Have you experienced that to be the case where you are?
Yes.
And how do you manage their visiting the child?
Yes, that is actually what I was going to talk about also. So you have to understand that an orphanage is not only for orphans. So an orphanage is actually, in my opinion, in German we have a better word for that. It is Kinderheim or Kinderhaus. That means that it's a safe haven for children. So that means that any child who is in a difficult situation may come to the orphanage temporarily or permanently. So one brother is asking, for example, if there is any policy to reunite families of orphans. So I will give you an example. A few months ago, we got a call from the police of Ikbinle, and it is a city north of Porto Novo, and they had found a boy with unknown age and unknown name, who was not able to talk, who was mentally retarded, severely retarded, and they did not know whom he belonged, and nobody actually came looking for him for a week. So they asked whether we can take care of him until they find the family. So that we did, and ultimately they were not able to find the family. So we went into the villages nearby with his photo and showed around his photo. And actually, to make it short, we found his family, alhamdulillah, and we reunited him with his family. We had called him Yahya. Afterwards, we found out that his name was Omer, and we thought he was like 13. He was actually 17. So, but this is one way for a child to come temporarily into security, and when the family structure is clear, to reestablish then him into the family, re-socialize him into the family. But to be honest, the majority of the children who are in our orphanage will most likely never be re-socialized into their own families, because there are severe reasons for why they have actually entered in the first place. So there are children who were severely malnourished, who were abandoned, who were violated mentally, physically, sexually. So there is several reasons why a child enters the orphanage, and it takes some degree of severe situation before actually a child comes into the situation to enter the orphanage.
Jazakallah for that. And in terms of their, because obviously Humanity First is derived from our Jamaat and obviously the values of Islam, but there may be some children who have a background or have a Christian background, for example. Do you maintain that Christian upbringing as much as possible, or are you a secular organization that doesn't get kids involved in that religious aspect of life? How do you manage that?
Okay, so about Humanity First itself, you know that we obviously are under the guidance of Khalifatul Masih, but work irrespective of the religion of the beneficiaries. But the work we do is due to our Muslim belief. So we don't go and say we are a secular organization. We are obviously we have Ahmadiyya in our name, the orphan. So that is clear for all the child protection service centers that we are tightly connected to the Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat. But it depends on the situation. So a child that is born a Christian does not necessarily understand his Christianity. If the child understands his Christian background, then we will allow him to further follow his religious beliefs and even facilitate him to do so. So let me give an example. For in September, we got a child who is, so the majority of our children is Christian background. I will tell you why later. There is some religious issues why the majority of our children are actually from Christian background. So he was wearing a like necklace, or what do you call it?
The cross.
So,
yeah.
Not a cross. It was a picture of Mother Mary.
Sure.
So the other children, when he came, told him to take it off because it is forbidden here. So he came to me complaining about that, and the other children also were with him, and they said, no, tell him to take it off, it's forbidden here. And I told him, no, why he should take it off? And the other children were astonished and said, it is forbidden. And I said, yes, well, it is forbidden for you, but not for him, because he decided to wear it. But actually, he decided to wear it because it was a gift from his father, not because of his religious beliefs. So what you have to understand is the children, they don't have a proper religious belief, most of them. The most children who come, they are in the age below 10, and even below 12. So the children, they will accept what they will understand what you or they will follow what you follow. They will accept your values. They will understand that whatever you are doing is because of your values, and they will like these values. You will be their role model, and this is something that happens in families as well. So it's just asking me or my wife to raise the children neutral of religion or of religious beliefs is the same as if I would ask you to raise your own child neutral of religious belief and let him decide when he's 18 if he wants which religion he wants to choose. So this is a very secular understanding, and that is not our understanding. So we give the children education, we give the children worldly and spiritual education as we think is true. And if a child, however, says himself, no, I'm a Christian, then I myself will drive him to the church. But that until now has not happened. So we have a clear guidance on that also from Hazur. Hazur Ekdas has, when we started the orphanage, we also had this question. So Hazur Ekdas said, all the children who don't have an understanding of their religion, raise them as Ahmadis. And the children who have an understanding of their religion, allow them and enable them to live according to the traditions of their own religion. So that means that in our orphanage, we don't celebrate Christmas, we don't celebrate Easter or any other Christian holiday, we celebrate Eid. But if a child, one of the bigger children, says that no, I want to be Christian and I want to celebrate whatever they want to celebrate, then we will allow that, of course.
Sure. And touching upon the question of mothers who you use to look after the children, and for those who are listening, I will activate microphones and hands up after this question. But how do you ensure that the mothers that you hire are providing proper care? Do you have a training program for them? Are they standards they need to meet? Or is it more subjective? Is it a case of how well are they looking after the children based upon your assessment in your eyes and feeling their love? How does it work?
I think it's both. Okay. Obviously, we have every day in the morning, we have a handover of the shift. And in that handover, we discuss every morning specific problems about children. And by doing so, my wife and I, we also give our vision, which is we try to transport the vision of Hazur Ekdas to the mothers and to all the staff. That's what we think is reasonable for the children. But we have also a training. But the training is something that is done by the social worker. So, you have to understand the position of the social worker is actually quite strong. The social worker is a kind of a advocate for the children. He takes care of the best interest of the children. And if it's against the administration, he will take a stand against the administration. And that is very important, that you as an administrator also have a control, also have somebody who tells you when you are doing something wrong. And ultimately, it is better if the social worker tells you that you are doing something wrong, but then you are told that at the day of judgment. So better if the social worker gives you a head start that something is wrong and you can correct it. So that you have to understand. And the social worker, he also takes care of the training for the mothers. So he regularly has meeting with the mothers. He regularly has meeting with the psychologist in order to discuss specifics about the children. And we also have regular meetings where he tells me what we should do, what we should change with respect to the work of the mothers, of the security guards, of anyone else. And yes, that's how we do that. You have your...
Sorry. I've enabled cameras and microphones now, so if you'd like to ask a question directly, please use the hand up tool and I will come to you. But I'd like to start with Fazal Saab. If you are able to come on off mute and ask your question about policies, please feel free to do so.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Alhamdulillah.
Jazakallah for the presentation and also the feedback from Walid Saab. It was excellent. And I think there are a number of points that have been covered, but we need to remember, for example, safeguarding this. Here it is more acute with orphans, but we actually have to have similar thinking for our schools and our vocational training centers where girls and young women are involved, because they too can be exploited by trainers. So actually there's a lot we can learn from the orphanage experience for other projects. I just wanted to ask that we are in the process of building another orphanage in Western Uganda, which Germany are instrumental in. What is your sense of the extent to which we could take the same policies and processes and adopt them in the new orphanage, or to what extent might they have to be customized for the Ugandan environment?
So I think some of the basic principles Fadouliak just has given us are not only for Benin, but they are actually for the Orphan Care. And Alhamdulillah, we have a pilot project in Benin now, and I think regarding the structure of the security of the mothers, of other people who are involved in the safeguarding of the children, we can take a lot of these ideas, but we must not forget that it's a different country and with a different system, so we have to adjust it to the local policy. But I think Osama Bhai, because I'm not involved in the Uganda orphanage, so Osama Bhai perhaps can give more insight on that.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum. So I think Walid Bhai already mentioned most of the things. We need to have to get in touch with the responsible person who will be there. And as we do not have a lot of experience with Uganda right now, we will have to visit the country and see how it is going. But at the moment, I think that we can take most of the processes. We can just take them over to Uganda, and maybe there are some minor changes we will have to do. And also considering the requirements by the government, maybe there are some changes that we have to consider, but we are still in the phase of analyzing it.
Okay.
Jazakallah. Hopefully that answers your question, Fazal Saab. Just want to quickly move on to Dr. Azhar Siddiqui Saab from the UK. Feel free to come off mute.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Azhar Siddiq. I'm HF medical lead, HF UK medical lead for medical projects in Ghana. And that was a wonderful presentation, really, truly exceptional, and a very, very blessed scheme. You've covered a lot of the basic details. And the thing I was interested in, you mentioned, first of all, that most of the children are under the age of 10 years when they come to you. What is the process for rehabilitation of these children back into society? I presume a time comes when they will transition. I don't know, maybe when they're 18 or whatever your guidelines are. back into society? Do you have some form of mentorship for them back into society? Do you have some place where they will maybe live in some sort of sheltered accommodation to start with? Or do they go to relatives? What is the plan for this transition period, which I guess is quite a difficult time? And have you encountered that yet? Or are you only at the moment dealing with the very young children? Jazakallah.
Jazakumullah for the very important question. So let me start with our very limited experience on that, which is actually non-existent, as you have already suggested that we have not encountered the situation yet. So our oldest child right now at the orphanage is 16 years old, is a girl. And obviously we are thinking about what we are going to do. But let me start with the rehabilitation into the society question. So you have to understand that, first of all, most of the children are not out of society before they come to us. So they are actually a part of the society when they come to us, and they stay like that because they go to a private school. So school where all the other children go. So they go to other activities. We even used to go to some sports activities, which has stopped due to shortage of personnel to do that, to continue with that. But however, they are involved in the life outside of the orphanage. It depends on the age. So even obviously, a 5-year-old child you cannot just send out. But we go regularly out with the older children. We take them with us when we go for shopping, when we do any other stuff. So they accompany us to learn how the world outside looks like. But your question is very, very important. That we have to have a plan on what are we going to do in the transition period. So for our understanding right now, that may change at some stage when we actually encounter the situation, is that when you have own children, you don't throw them out when they are 18. So we have an obligation towards the children with respect to education and with respect to family planning. So the 16-year-old girl is like our daughter. So we will enable her to finish her school, and we will see what she wants to do after that, if she wants to go to university or if she wants to start a apprenticeship or whatever she wants to do. We will encourage her to do the best out of her life. We will, if she allows us, obviously, we will find a partner suitable for her to marry, and when she has a place to go, she will go. But the orphanage will always stay her home. And that is something very, very important for us. You know, even especially for girls, when they are married and they go out, they still need one place as reference where they could always go and they will always find an open door. And that is for them our orphanage. And that's how that's how my wife sees the situation. We don't see it as technically as the governmental structures do. They have an interest that we get the children out of the orphanage as soon as possible. Even before, a few days ago, I got a surprise visit from the court, who is responsible for the minors, and they asked me about what is our transition concept. And I told him that, and he was a little bit upset about that. And he said, you can't have the children until they are 18. You have to get them out rapidly in order to have place for other children. And their idea is also reasonable. So there are a lot of other children who need help. If for the problem? What is a proper place? How do you define that? So from our perspective, any downgrading of education or of quality of life for the children would not be a proper place. And so the only three options I see in order to get the children out of the orphanage with dignity is either if the children are temporary with us and we reintegrate them into the family as we did for the 17-year-old boy, or the children form a own family when they are 18, 19, 20 or whatever age and have an education and can live independently. Or the third one is adoption. So if you find a reasonable couple who can adopt a child and the legal framework is also appropriate, then this is also a viable possibility. However, it is connected with a lot of bureaucratic hurdles, and it may take 5 to 6 years in order to have one child adopted. So it is not easy. So these are the three. Well, the fourth one is a bit it's not a happy ending. Is obviously a child can die, and that is the fourth possibility for a child to leave the orphanage.
Jazakallah, thank you.
Jazakallah.
Thank you for the question. So 3 more questions. I'm conscious of time. There's 16 minutes left, but we'll go to Brother Raji Saab. If you could come off mute. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. It's Raji or Raji? Okay, we'll come back to Raji Saab and we'll move to number 2. The name I have here is Qudsiya. I'm presuming Qudsiya Saiba. If you could come off mute, that'd be great.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Ji wa alaikum salam.
Jazakallah for your presentation, and it's been really, really informative. So just introduction, I volunteer for the research and development team for Orphan Care in the UK. My particular interest is around any training. Is there any training strategy for the caretakers and volunteers? Is there a requirement for training before anyone comes and works there as a permanent or a volunteer? Or is there anything there for that?
So, Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. To understand this question correctly, you mean if there is a requirement for somebody from abroad coming for Waqf Azi or for the caretakers here in Benin?
I guess it's two questions. So firstly, it would be for the caretakers there. Are they trained? Do they need to have any kind of training before they can work there?
No, they don't. They get all the training when they start working with us. So when they start, we have a transition time of 2 to 4 weeks where they actually don't work independently, but rather with another caretaker who is already experienced, and she explains the work. There is also no legal requirement for any minimum education. Even we have one mother who cannot write, and it is really a blessing for us that we are able to give this mother also a chance, this caretaker also a chance to make a living for herself. So the second question for people who are from abroad for volunteers. So as Osama Bhai has mentioned in his presentation, a guest house has to be in place if you want to host people who come to visit and who come to do work for Azi. And this is actually under process at the moment. Right now, we don't have a guest house in the orphanage. We have a guest house of the Jamaat, but that is not in the premises of the orphanage. So we are very happy, and we are really honored if somebody sacrifices his precious time and comes to the orphans. And we want to share the blessings that go along with caring of an orphan. It has to have a concept. So to give you just a small idea, if somebody comes without any concept, just to work as a caretaker, so I cannot let any foreigner work as a caretaker independently. As I said, even the caretakers who work here with the contract, they have a transition period of 2 to 4 weeks. So if somebody comes for 2 weeks, he will not be able to work independently. Then anyone who comes has also to understand that if you come for a short period of time, that it is not, it is a possibility for us to share the blessings, and it is a possibility for the volunteer who is coming to engage in the work, with the orphans. But you should have a proper concept, and you have to understand that it is not possible to have you completely integrated in a short period of time. So there is a language barrier. If you don't speak French, there is some cultural barrier, and a volunteer will always be treated differently by the other caretakers. So that means that all the volunteers who came until now, they actually more work in the administrative process, or so this is also okay. But if somebody wants to come, he should approach Osama Bhai in Germany. We should have a proper concept, and with the concept and with the time frame, we can decide if and how it is possible.
Jazakallah. I have to move on. Thank you for the question, Qadsi Saiba. I hope that was useful, and obviously we'll be sharing contact details of Osama Saab and Walid Saab after the call. Quickly, if I could just move on to Nasser Saab from Belgium.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. My name is Nasser Ahmed Jelbi. I'm one of the board members in Belgium. My question is, there are some children who have experienced some trauma, losing their parents, or children who were abused. How hard was it to gain their trust so they can flourish further?
If Tahir Sahib allows me to narrate a short story on that, because this is a very faith-inspiring quest to do. So I don't know what the time frame is.
No, please. This is box office. Go for it. Thank you.
Right. So, it depends on the children, and it depends on what they have been through. So, in the most cases, it will take a few weeks, and the children will automatically see the other children, and you will gain their trust. But then there are also very special cases. So one of the children that in the end of September, we got a child, 10 years old, from the street. So when he was 7, his parents got divorced, and there was some discussion who would keep the child. So in the middle of this discussion in the night, the mother kidnapped the child and went to her village. Then the brother of the father kidnapped the child back. After that, the older sister, who was 20, kidnapped the child and took it to her house. Before the boyfriend of the sister kidnapped him again and sold him to someone for forced labor. And there he ran away, but he did not know where he was. So he spent 3 years on the street. So you have to understand a 7 to 10 years old boy who has spent 3 years on the street, that does something with the child. And he only knows that he has to fight for everything he wants to have. And the only real punishment he knows is a physical punishment. So we in the orphanage, we have a zero tolerance policy with respect to giving any child a physical punishment. So my workers also know that the moment they touch a child with the intention to harm him, their contract is terminated immediately. And that actually is also written in the contract. So that was a very difficult situation. The child came to our orphanage and he was extremely aggressive. And we were thinking about actually transferring him to another center who takes care of criminal and special, like children, especially boys with special attention, special need. So in this situation, we had a lot of discussion with the psychologist, with a lot of other members of our team. The problem is that in the other center, 80 to 90% of the boys who leave this other center at some time become criminals. So we had the idea that there is a reasonable chance for him to stay in our orphanage and actually have a normal life, but for that he has to drastically change. So then Allah Ta'ala's help came a few weeks later. So in all of this, we did not get hold of him, and we were actually thinking of what to do when we got a call from another child protection service to take care of another 10-year-old boy. So his story is less interesting. He was abandoned by his grandfather. But when we brought this boy to our orphanage, the new boy, Philip, and the old boy who was actually so aggressive, Martin, they looked at each other astonished, and then they started laughing and joyfully embraced each other. So we were astonished what had happened. So what had happened actually was that these two boys, they were very old friends and used to live in the same village when Martin was actually kidnapped, and which separated them. But since Philip has entered our orphanage, Martin is completely socialized. He can remember now his old days when he was in the village, and he is the nicest boy you can imagine. So sometimes Allah Ta'ala's help also comes.
Okay. Excellent. So with that, I just want to give a big jazakallah to Walid Saab and Osama Saab. We've been communicating on and off for nearly 2 months now with regards to not only this session we've had here today, but also an entire training plan we are in Humanity First International with the cooperation of HF Germany looking to develop. So thus enabling any HF branch around the world from start to finish to set up, run, maintain an orphanage and all of the details that need to be taken care of in making that happen. So with that, I want to say Jazakallah again to both of you. But before everyone goes, I'd just like to talk about a couple of things the Humanity First International capacity building team are doing and going to be releasing out to the whole HF family across the world. So the first thing I'd like to just present is the HF National Branch Induction Pack. So based upon requests from many HF teams across the world, they've been looking for essentially a guidance document which helps them understand what is, first of all, the scope of HF International, what is the ideal branch structure that a branch should have in place, what roles should be in place, and with regards to each role, what is the role of Humanity First International with relation to one department, and what is the role of the counterpart within a national branch. So what should the director of HFI, admin and HR, what should they be doing? What are their activities? What are their deliverables? But likewise, we also list out what are the deliverables of someone working locally for a national branch and the things that they should be delivering. So inshallah, that will be a helpful guide to all of our branches across the world, and we'll inshallah be releasing that later this month. Now, secondly, and I just wanted to run through this video I'd like to show everyone, and this is with relation to something that HFI has been working on and is going to be launching for every branch to take part in. So essentially, we are launching a geographic information system. And what that means is all of your assets, whether they be orphanages, water wells, schools, hospitals, we essentially want to get all of that data in, where they're located, and put that on a map. And that will help with primarily your donor relations. So if you imagine someone who has given, say, 50,000 euros to build a well, they'll then be able to see it on a map with their name underneath. But essentially, it's great for donor management to see the impact that Humanity First has had all across the world. But we do in making this project a success. So I'm just going to play a quick video. It only lasts a couple of minutes, then we'll call time for the meeting, inshallah. Hopefully you can hear this sort of.
This is Humanity First's Geographical Information System. Humanity has built infrastructure around the world, such as schools, hospitals, and thousands of water wells, with millions of beneficiaries worldwide. With your help, Humanity First International would like to highlight your work by literally putting your work on a map, so that people around the world can search and see where thousands of Humanity First assets, such as water well installations, are located. The process is very simple. Use the form provided to give us the required details about each asset. If you are providing details for more than one asset, you can use the bulk upload spreadsheet to provide us with the initial information all at once. The capacity building team will check the information provided and refer back to you if there are any queries. Once your submission has been approved, your data will be displayed on the web as part of a dedicated map, showing the infrastructure you have helped build. For this initiative to be successful, it is crucial you provide data promptly and accurately, and each well should be given an accurate location. In order to provide accurate coordinates of the location of the asset, such as a well, simply use Google Maps to find the location. Right-click to find the coordinates on the map, and click on the longitude and latitude values to copy them. Please work closely with colleagues of the Capacity Building Department within Humanity First International, so that this project comes to fruition quickly, and your good work is visible to the world.
So inshallah, those two things will be released very shortly. Wonderful. Jazakallah everybody for attending. I hope you found this useful. Again, massive Jazakallah to Osama Saab and Waleed Saab, who's currently in Pakistan. So thank you to you both. and Allah bless you immensely. The work that's happening across the world, and especially in the orphanage, is amazing to see. So with that, I'd like to wish everyone Assalamu alaikum.